This is the back cover of the latest issue. I frequently get asked why I don't do political artwork, and that's mostly because political artwork has the life of politics, essentially. And if all I did was political artwork, I'd be creating a legacy of meaninglessness. I mean, if I was alive in the 70s and did a lot of political art, all I would have would be a stack of Nixon jokes or something, and nobody wants to read that now. But over the past 8 years, I've felt compelled to do a couple things, and this is a parody of a Maxwell House ad, basically about Guantanamo. I don't think I'll read it for you, but you can see the oil good to the last drop. So what I'm trying to get at here is the sense that this, in a way, like we're keeping these prisoners in Cuba. It literally is in our backyard when we're doing this, but we're doing it to stay out of an international court. And I wanted to highlight the fact that, you know, this is happening, we're doing it, and just we never see it as part of our lives. So this is the actual ad that I parodied. So, and I make fun of the fact that, of course, the coffee comes from Colombia and Central America, South America, and that's where we're keeping these prisoners when we're bringing them over. Some more reference material from the good old internet, and these lovely photographs. It's genuinely horrifying and truly embarrassing. There's a character, I don't know if it's actually over here in Europe or not, but American Coffee is stamped with this cartoon character named Juan Valdez, which is a completely fabricated personality, which is supposed to make us feel better about coffee that comes from Colombia. So the character that's on this ad is Guantanamo. So, and he's given the thumbs up, of course, you know. So and Abu Ghraib. So anyway, so that's it all together. So again, I apologize for the last 8 years. So. That's all. It takes me a long time to do a page. The reason I draw the way I do is because the story is fictional. To me, it seems like a more honest reflection of the idea of fiction in comics to work in a completely synthetic, artificial, deliberative way. Every time I try to do a fictional story, drawing in a much looser way, it feels very false to me. If I do an autobiographical story, though, then I just draw directly on the page without worrying about it and let my hand guide it because it's about my personal memories rather than synthetically creating something, which is what fiction is. It's about crafting something. I mean, I guess it's equivalent to somebody like John Updike, basically my favorite American author who just died 4 or 5 days ago, who wrote in beautiful, magnificent, poetic, synesthetic prose about very mundane, personal human things. So, and as I've said before as well, I have nothing against adult comics that show the author's hand. In a way, it's sort of tantamount to trying to read a novel in original manuscript form. You want to read a novel in printed text, so I'm trying to do with pictures what I think of as the equivalent of printed text. The best thing about comics, though, is that it's flexible enough that there's plenty of cartoonists who don't do that and probably hate me and what I do, and I think that's great because it's a very, very flexible, open medium and allows for lots of different ways of expression. I've just, over the past 10 years, I've been amazed at the, for lack of a better word, flowering of young cartoonists trying all sorts of things, and they all do things that I'm completely incapable of, so, which is depressing and heartening at the same time. So. Yeah, I mean, essentially I think comics are a medium. They're a visual art of reading as opposed to a visual art of looking. Fundamentally what you do when you read a comic, you read the pictures. You go through them as quickly as possible to get the story. What's most important is the coalescence of the narrative and the story and the characters in your mind, not the pictures that you're lingering over or looking at. Then again, there's plenty of cartoonists who do beautiful drawings that are lingerable, I guess so. But so I try to draw pictures that are the equivalent of words on a page that you can read as quickly as possible. Because I don't even want the pictures to be that interesting. I just want them to act in the service of what we see when we look out into the world, which is a very simple visual approximation of a chair or a person. I had a very strange experience when I went to my high school reunion and I saw all of the kids I grew up with who are, now 40 years old like I am, but we all agreed sitting around a table that we all still look like children to each other. And we were looking at each other. We could see the wrinkles in the hair and everything, or the lack thereof. But I still saw children, and I realized that my perceptions were my conceptions were affecting my perceptions. My mind was changing what I was seeing in the world. And that is fundamentally what the adult mind does. That's why I think time passes so rapidly for us as we get older and older, because we spend so much time reflecting or planning or worrying, thinking about things. As children, we don't do that. We're too busy looking at the world. And time passes very slowly for us there. But as we get older and older, it gets faster, faster, and people start drifting off to the side, and they die. And before we know it, we're 60 years old or something. It's one of the... There was a movie that came out last year called Synecdoche, New York. I don't know if anybody saw it here, but I think it's one of the probably one of the greatest American films ever made, which really captures this feeling and captures this idea. If it comes out in France, you get a chance to see it. It's by Charlie Kaufman, who did Being John Malkovich and Adaptation. It's just a magnificently powerful film. So it doesn't have to, but I think you run up against problems when you're writing autobiographies. You start really worrying about your allegiance to your memories and reality. And I tried to do a strip about my grandmother's house, and I realized I was thinking, God, what kind of salt shakers did she have? And I thought, I'm going to go crazy worrying about this. And at a certain point, you realize that fiction is really a better way to tell the truth than biography, because a biography is always going to be filled with lies. You have to find a mortar of fiction to hold together the truth in biography, and I decided this isn't going to work. Plus, fiction allows you to get above a story and see it for what it is. It allows you to see it with an honesty that you simply can't do with biography, because you're so mired in it being the main character. So it's very hard to do, though. It's hard to get into. So Linda Berry helped me with that when I was a young artist. She wrote me really long letters when I was only about 20 years old or so, when I was living alone in Chicago and going to art school, that changed my life, really. And she helped me figure out how to start working in fiction. And for that reason, I'll always be grateful to her. She's one of the great American cartoonists. So she really, in a lot of ways, like everything that we all do now, it fundamentally comes back to her innovations as a writer in comics. So